All right, I am back with a marathon video, which is probably no surprise given the big showcase that happened this weekend. I wrote an article about this the next day, which was pretty lengthy, but I obviously wanted to get my thoughts down on video as well. A disclaimer, I did not go to the creator events to play it alongside other people, so I have not gotten hands-on with it yet. The closed alpha is coming up. I'm hoping to get a key for that. I think I can. So I'll have different thoughts on that later. But this is going to be based on, what everybody saw. And, this is 99.99999% of the general public who have not gotten hands-on with Marathon yet. I have been essentially relentlessly positive on at least what, has been shown for Marathon so far. That includes the original trailer that was awesome, the very cool visuals, cool audio, and then since then the concept art has been sick. The ARGs have been really cool looking, and then there's some music tracks that were found that are awesome. And then I'll flash forward ahead here to we got this really sick cinematic in the vein of by one of the guys who does some of the best Love, Death, and Robots animations. The problem is all of this I knew the entire time was circling the truth that I knew was in place, that this is an extraction shooter. This is a PvP experience. Yes, PvP, VE technically, but the E of that is not exactly a major factor. And I knew that, even though all of this stuff was very cool, that it would take a lot to make this game for me. And it seemed unlikely this would be my type of game without some, major twists or additions or whatever. But I'm not really here to talk about why I'm not a dedicated PvP player anymore. What happens is I usually will play a PvP game I like for a couple of weeks, and then I kind of just drift off of it. I used to play a lot more when my, my real life friends were playing, but either they're not playing PvP games anymore or they're not playing games at all because everyone has jobs and everyone's very busy. So that's kind of my, where I'm at with this. Although I am going to give this, as much of a shot as I can. I am really going to put a lot of time into this to, give it the fairest possibility I can. I want to talk about kind of more generally what was shown and how I feel about that, how I feel about its prospects, and then things like the, audience reaction, social reaction, which I really think you can't discount. I understand that there is this sentiment that Twitter is not real life. There's it is not representative of everyone and whatever, and you get into these negative spiral echo chambers and things like that where it's cool to hate on something. That is that's true to an extent, except here I think of a lot of the criticisms I'm seeing are pretty valid and mirror a lot of my own. They may be stated rather rudely, when I'm definitely going to try and be more, I guess, nuanced than that. Then you have, of course, the idiots about the robot clones aren't hot enough. Okay, we're not even going to talk about that. That's just really dumb. In terms of what was shown, I think the main complaint here, well, there's probably two, but the main complaint in terms of the footage was that it just didn't look like anything all that innovative. It looked like an extraction shooter, but it looked like it kind of played like a mix of Apex Legends and Destiny. It has the trios, focus. It has classes, which yes can be modified, but it's not a battle royale, but it very much to me screamed Apex more than anything. And some people are complaining about there's Destiny animations in there, which I see to a certain extent, but fundamentally this felt very much like Apex, which, is a game that was huge when it arrived, but is slowly kind of been on the decline. Maybe they can take players from Apex. But the aesthetic that has been so cool in all of these other promotional materials, this has never been in-engine footage. And this is the first time we have seen true in-engine footage. Sometimes people make cutscenes and they're like, well, this is in-engine. Nothing they've done so far has been an in-engine. And we're getting to see the Tiger engine, which, Destiny 2 debuted 7-8 years ago at this point. And you would expect some major upgrades for a brand new game here. It still looks kind of dated, in terms of, a lot of the character movement animations, especially. That was a common complaint, and I do sort of agree with that. I think it looks, even if it's not totally matching the aesthetic, I do think it looks unique. It certainly stands out visually from a lot of other shooters on the market, if not essentially all of them. I don't think this has the quote Concord problem, which you really don't want Concord trending on Twitter when you debut your game. I'll talk about that later, but the aesthetics here, the music, all of that, it is still good. It's just not as crazy good as you saw in these out of engine cinematics. And finally debuting the footage here in terms of what they showed just, in the event and then showing a bunch of streamers playing it. I don't think there was anything there that really jumps out because I talked sometimes about, I think I wrote a whole article about this, about, I think Gambit kind of gave me hope about Bungie being able to do something really innovative here. I know Gambit is not everyone's favorite mode, but like when that was developed, it was this age of kind of like battle royales and, these similar kind of modes doing stuff like that. And then Bungie came out and made Gambit, which is this totally, unique, crazy activity. And I know a lot of the Gambit people, Lars Becken, other people like that went over to work on Marathon. And this whole time, it's kind of been like, this could be an extraction shooter, but it really needs to be kind of a significant twist on the genre. And instead, it looks like a normal extraction shooter with, different aesthetics and, gameplay that very much screams to me Apex Legends. Like, it doesn't do anything to really wow most of the audience seeing it. I'm not going to say, there certainly has been, some positivity around it. I've seen at least a good amount of Destiny creators saying it looks really cool. You can go under comments on YouTube and Twitter and whatever. And there are some comments in there that are positive, but the top comments and like 70-80% of the comments are negative. And you can kind of see the disparity here outright, where at the time I'm doing this, it's the gameplay trailer is 19,000 likes to 12,000 dislikes. It's not negative, but that's not a great ratio. And you can compare that to the cinematic, which is, I don't know anymore, it's like 46,000 likes to 2,000 likes. So like that cinematic was amazing, but it's this disparity between what the game feels like it should be and what the game appears to actually be. And there was a disconnect there that I don't really think played out well when you actually saw what the game is like. The other issue, the very, very big issue here is price, is the fact that this costs $40. I understand how game development is now. I understand when you put this much time and money into something, you need revenue. And so it's not, you're going to maybe charge a premium price for it. I think they looked at Helldivers 2 and they're like, they did really well with the $40 price, so let's do that. Obviously, after that, Concord, had a $40 price, and that was horrific, but, that's not the only reason it failed, but it didn't help. I think by that time, though, it was a little too late to pivot based on the plans they had. But it is a very, very tough sell in the current state of the market to ask people for $40 for, I'd say especially what we're getting here. Like generally speaking, the, PvP, competitive PvP market, or, all the big PvP games, most of them are free. Apex is free. Fortnite is free. Marvel Rivals now, the big success, is free. And you make up that money with battle passes and microtransactions. There are some games that, have an upfront cost, but a lot of them are not $40, and a lot of them are extremely, extremely old, and people paid that cost years and years ago. So you're paying $40, and obviously there are going to be seasonal battle passes. Obviously there are going to be microtransactions, none of which were detailed here, but, $10 battle passes, $15, $20 skins, that's standard. I mean, that is almost certainly what it's going to be here. I can't imagine it would be anything different. So you're layering that on top of the price. The other issues is the scope of what is being released here. It is 6 heroes, which is not many, especially for a game that's focused on trios, because, every other game you're going to have, so many of the heroes that are just overlapping, and I feel like that could get a bit dull. Apex launched with, I think, 8 heroes, which was not a lot, but Apex is free. There's going to be 3 maps, which for an extraction shooter, I think is like not the worst. It's not it's not like Call of Duty or something where, you know, you need all these elaborate maps. I do think that is maybe not the biggest issue, but there's one mode, you know, it's this threes extraction mode as far as we can tell. There's not even solos. You can play solo, but all that means is you're going to be a solo player going up against threes. And, you know, all these other games have added different modes over time. And, you know, even though it was kind of laughed out of the room, like some games did, you know, I think Delta Force did add a PvE mode at some point, but this isn't launching with that. And in interviews, it's been very weird because you're asking some of these developers like what they're most excited about, what they, you know, think makes this game stand out against their other competitors. One of these things is ranked play, which I don't know if that exists at launch, and it has not been detailed or explained at all. I'm not sure that or when that's coming. I don't think it's coming for launch. And then the other thing is the fourth map, which is not launching with the game. Supposedly there are going to be, someone said like raid-like mechanics, but I think it's going to be on the lighter side of that. It's just, you know, maybe things you have to do cooperatively, and maybe that put a spin on it. But again, you're not launching with that. And it seems like this game is not done. You know, obviously things, you know, get added over time, and these games, you know, a lot of these games get really built out, and that's always the plan, you know, new heroes, new maps, all this stuff. But this is like, it feels like kind of the bare minimum to launch with this amount of stuff, even at baseline. And then to charge $40 on top of that with the promise that better things are coming later, that is a very, very big ask, and one that I don't know if a lot of people are going to be super excited about. I think I've said this before that I do think the biggest group that are probably going to purchase this game are Destiny players, because there are a lot of Destiny players and they have been playing a Bungie game for 7 years. A lot of people, it's main game, so they at least want to check out what Bungie's doing, even if maybe the extraction shooter thing is not for them and they drift away and whatever. But then we have the very fun thing where this launches the same day as Borderlands 4. And Borderlands 4 is, you know, at least the second most high profile looter shooter on the market. It predates Destiny. Destiny, you know, took some things from Borderlands, which took everything from Diablo, whatever. So that's, you know, that's going to be a tough call for the people who are dedicated PvE players who also want to play, you know, a real looter instead of a PvP extraction shooter. There's just a lot of things that I think are working against this game. And I still think the aesthetic, the world is very cool. I think they can build it out into something, you know, really neat. I think there is a lot of potential for the future here, with new characters, you know, new modes, new places to explore, new storylines, things like that. There's the potential for there is everywhere. But the keyword there is potential. So what's going to have to happen now is at launch, everybody's really going to have to just love how the game plays. And it's Bungie. I expect shooting to feel good. Like, you know, Halo is like one of the gold standards for how multiplayer shooting feels. Destiny, biases aside, I still think Destiny is one of, if not the best feeling shooter on the market. So if it can channel some aspect of that, if it still has that Bungie magic, in terms of just how it plays to feel, I think that is a big thing in its favor. The problem is like you got to launch well, you got to launch big, or like you're gone. You can't wait, you know, till season 2 or whatever to really get the game in high gear and be like, oh, well, this is the time you need to play it. And you know, we get to all these comparisons where this is going to be the next Concord, and like this gets brought up, I don't know, very often, but in this case, this is another big Sony shooter. This is $40. You know, part of that is, oh, you know, it's too woke, and they're, you know, the whatever. That was the complaint about Concord. But the idea is that it's a shooter that may be, you know, dead on arrival. And I'm certainly not willing to say that. I think it is way, way too early to say that before alpha, before beta, before people, you know, getting their hands on it at launch. I don't think this is going to be a game that shuts down into people lose the context of just how unprecedented the failure of Concord was. Like, I think it's the biggest failure in industry history, like right up there with ET cartridges being buried in a landfill. You don't see a game with that much time and money thrown into it be shut off in 2 weeks. It doesn't happen. But there is a difference, obviously. There's a gap between a successful game on Concord and, a game that does pretty good but not good enough, a game that just does average, and a game that does not work but is not, Concord. So I think those comparisons are already overblown, and I don't see any relevance with those. I'm also a little confused by what they're about to launch, which is a closed NDA alpha, which means you can talk about the game, but you can't stream it. You can't record videos of it. We are 5 months from launch here, so doing a closed alpha now is weird. And then apparently there is going to be a beta, presumably an open beta, between now and the actual launch. I just said I wasn't going to compare it to Concord, but the open beta can be a pretty significant signifier of how the final game may do. So because everyone's checking out it for free, and if you don't have enough people checking it out for free in decent numbers when they have to pay $40 for it, what's going to happen there? I do agree that the internet can get into negativity echo chambers, but like you want that good first impression. And it had it with the initial Marathon trailer. And we've seen trailers for other shooters that have been far less well received, or, Suicide Squad, or did X Defiant get well received? I don't know. And then Fair Games, like that trailer, and then that game disappeared and it's, buried under negativity. It's important because it can be predictive of final results. I have seen, I do this for a living. I have tracked this stuff, and it is not outside the realm of possibility that, the first time you show off your game in full and it gets a very, very negative reception from, most people viewing it, even if they're not the target audience. Like, it's a little questionable what the target audience is, but it's a real thing. And it's something that publishers look at, that developers look at, and it just becomes this sort of vortex chamber that's very difficult to escape from. To do that, you can have a bunch of people playing the game, figuring out it's awesome, figuring out it's super fun, finding a way to showcase it better, to advertise it better. Destiny is like a master of making cool looking gameplay trailers, and that is not what we saw here. I don't think. It's so frustrating because this is so obviously such a cool world. Like you can see it in every other bit of marketing and the ARG and the CGI, short film. Like, it is so cool. And I know it's pointless, and to have me wish it was another looter shooter with PvE and PvE elements, like a Destiny replacement, that was always a pipe dream. That was never going to happen. Like, I get the realities of the current market, that you want to find some big PvP live shooter that can be the next whatever, like one of the big ones. But, trying to get to be one of the big ones when everyone is so locked into the genre is very tough. I do wonder at what point things tip, where there are too many high-profile, high-cost live games that don't work, that we flip back to more single-player-ish games or co-op games or things like that. One of the reasons Helldivers was so cool is because it was a co-op game, and I think people really enjoyed doing that. In terms of this being an extraction shooter, even there, like, I'm not even in this market, but the people are complaining that it lacks a very core aspect of extraction shooters, which is proximity chat, which is how you kind of get in, like, goofy, exciting, whatever situations when you're interacting with, other teams socially. Bungie said they're killing it because of potential toxicity, but like, I don't know if you can remove something that core to the experience. It's so much stacking up. There's a lot working against it. And the only thing that really I feel can break this out of it is if people get their hands on it and it's just awesome. And people that have play tested it are impressed with it. They do like it. It's just a matter of, is this game pretty good and pretty fun, or is it like the next big thing? And I don't think I'm being a doomer when I say that the current trajectory of this does not strike me as something that is going to be the next big thing. I'll have different thoughts on different aspects of this. I want to get my hands on the alpha, which I can apparently talk about but not show. And then open beta, more people will see it. And then, again, we're 5 months from launch here. So then it'll be in the wild and we can see how it does. We can see how it's received. But that was a rough debut. And I don't relish that. I don't want the game to fail, even if it's not for me. Why would I want the game to fail? Like, if that game tanks hard, that severely affects Bungie, that severely affects Destiny. Like, who knows what could happen from there? So I would love for Marathon to be a huge hit, but I can't just pretend I'm not seeing what I'm seeing or I think what I think. So I think everybody at Bungie's been working really hard on it. I think pretty much everyone there probably believes in it, a lot, and they're excited for players to get their hands on it. I think their passion is undeniable. I don't think anyone is like faking it there. But there's a difference between what you hope something is and what the reality is, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it's a disaster. And increasingly, it is just getting harder and harder to break into this market, which is so crowded, and so people are so loyal and so entrenched in so many of these games. For any game, this extraction shooter, this could have been an arena shooter, this could have been a battle royale. Like, any of these things would be hard to break out. So the hope was that this would be so unique that people will be like, whoa, like what a twist on this. Like, this is like nothing I've ever seen before. Let's do it. And so far, at least, it's not like that. Maybe once they add more maps, more modes, they have a lot more creative things going, it gets rolling there, but we don't have a timeline for that. And they're asking you to pay for it now, on the promise of these future things to come. So I'm not trying to be, I'm not being negative just for clicks. I don't care like about clicks. If I feel like I do a lot more clickbait YouTube stuff if I was like really, really, pushing that kind of thing. And God, look at the friggin' YouTube directory for this. Like, it's not great in terms of like, not just, the streamers doing analysis and stuff, but like, the outside commentary is not great. And I'm not trying to just be negative on it for its own sake, but there are many hills to climb, mountains to climb, in fact. So let me know what you think in the comments. I have a hunch. I know what a lot of people are going to say in the comments because I've been seeing it everywhere, but I will certainly read through them and see what you guys specifically think. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.